Okay, I'm gonna make this quick because I'm gonna go out to eat quick before my shift at a job I have gained. And also I am running on very much lack of sleep. I got like 3 hours sleep last night and got no sleep the night before, and I slept during the day yesterday. But anyway, uh, at the place where I've been primarily situated, or well, where I've been staying primarily here in Ottawa, I found this a few days ago, and I've been sitting on just making like talking about this quickly and splicing it in with one of my videos. So I saw this wine glass, and as you can see by the name, it's the brand. I thought at first it was just the name of the wine, but then well, realized it was the brand. It's called Carl Jung De-Alkalized uh, Guri Red. I can't pronounce that bit of French. And I found it honestly pretty funny, hilarious. I because okay, if you're a psychology nerd, you probably will know Carl Jung. He was a Swiss he was a Swiss psychologist, psychoanalyst, neuropsychologist, and philosopher who lived in the early 1900s. I believe he died in the 1950s, I believe. But anyway, and I've been brushing up on my psychology. He's prominently known for creating. Well, not I. I don't think he created. I just learned about the clusters of personalities, but he outlined the what he considered to be in terms of personality the difference between extroverts and introverts, and he also he outlined personification of personality in a sense. And he also, and I didn't actually know this, that this was a thing. I thought this was just, it's related to the ego, but I didn't know, I thought it was just referred to, it grouped in with the ego, um, in terms of your image. It's called uh, your self perception of like, your self perception, is called the Amias, I believe. Anyway, but he's also very widely known for being the first person in the psychiatric field, or specialist in the psychiatric field, to outline um, the symptoms and the presentation of the midlife crisis. And if you don't know what the midlife crisis is, it's a crisis of identity, or it can be grouped in as an identity crisis during your um, usually happening around your mid to late 40s or early 50s, around there, and having a crisis of identity of, basically, in many cases, of what you have done with your life. Anyway, and I just found that hilarious, considering this is a wine bottle. But then I actually wanted to look up, is this act, because it's the brand name, was this actually, like, did Carl Jung actually have an affiliation with a wine production company? And apparently I looked it up, and it's actually his family company, which I never knew that he actually made. And apparently he was a fan of wine, but he didn't like the fact of, he knew about, the effects of alcoholism, like in severe addiction to alcohol, and he wanted to, I guess, well, use a process to de-alkalize wine. Which, then again, though, I after I heard this, that, and apparently, as it's shown, his company is still um functioning. It's still around. I believe in Switzerland. But I, or no, oh, I guess not. No, fuck, I'm an idiot. In Germany, I guess, product of Germany, or at least they must have a factory location in Germany. Um, but when I looked up, like, what, I was also curious after not just hearing this, but what the hell de-alkalized wine was. Because now I'm no wine expert, but I thought, if I wasn't mistaken, there's the ingredients. Okay, I'm going to talk about that in a sec. If I'm not mistaken, I thought that wine, well, it's an alcoholic beverage. I thought specifically what made it, well, what made the drink wine was the fact that it had alcohol infused with it from fermented grapes. It was fermented grapes that, okay, I don't know if the fermentation of the grapes itself creates um alcohol out of it. There's some chemical compound reaction that creates alcohol into the drink, or if it's infused with the grapes. So, okay, if this is dealkalized, it says in the ingredients. First off, how is dealkalized wine an ingredient and then sugar and sulfites? It's like, okay, if you created the product though, and if wine in and of itself is an alcoholic product, as from what I looked up, that's the definition of wine, is fermented grapes and plus alcoholic content, then how is in the ingredient? That's like if it's like if for like sparkling water they just put the ingredients. It was the main ingredient was sparkling spring water. Like, no, it's carbonated. It's carbonation plus spring water. It's not like, or if like you had flavored water and you just put the ingredients were flavored water. No, the ingredients are whatever you used for the flavoring, and then the spring water. So I just I don't know. So, but I'm wondering what the hell is dealkalized wine. If that is, if I'm correct with the definition of wine, then how is this not just sugary grape juice? I I don't know. Right off the bat, yes, I was crying before this. It, I can't tell. I'm sitting on a, well, rather wobbly sort of stool. It's a, well, it's not exactly a stool. Whatever. I'm just sitting on a wobbly object, and I'm in a, well, I'm in a furnace room right now. So sorry if there's any adjacent noise to, well, where I'm sitting. It's just all the pipes and heating and the heating system of this place. And also sorry if there's some noise from upstairs. Just some people at, well, the place that I'm, well, staying. So also, I am just gonna state the clip that I'm gonna put at the beginning of this. I didn't shoot today. It's the same room, but I filmed it well, about probably now a week and a half ago or so. Excuse me. Why I was crying is just because I've been having, yet again, not a great day. I was trying to, in preparation for this video, in some sense, I was just rewatching some parts of my previous videos, and I was trying to find myself. I thought I had said something at one point in one of my videos, and I could not find it, and it was me saying that thing, or that bit of information. It was really, really bothering me that I didn't it started scaring me if I had misremembered. It was bothering me. It was very much bothering me. But sorry. Also, other than that, I'm not feeling great. I actually today felt like I was on the verge of a seizure, which is a rarity for me. It's not something I've usually typically felt with my psychosomatic neurological problems. Um, but well, not much I can do about it right now. But I am finally going to see not a psychiatrist, which I thought I was going to see initially when this person told me, but I was able to get in contact with just a general practitioner. So hopefully, and miraculously, this baffled when I thought it was a psychiatrist, it baffled me. I knew it was too good to be true. Well, good enough at the very least for getting in to see a just general physician in Canada. Uh, if any of you are Canadians watching, I've talked about, and I'm sure you know about our terrible healthcare system. No prioritization and just backlogged, so backlogged. And it's also because, well, running out of doctors or people in the healthcare field. Anyway, I I got an appointment with a doctor for I've been trying to get a physical from a doctor here in Ottawa for the entire time that I've been here, and recently been trying to get in touch with a psychiatrist. An explanation to why is because of my sugar addiction. I want to kick it. At the very least, get it to a moderate level. I've already talked about stuff relating to it in previous videos, so I'm not going to go much in depth on that here. And I also want to talk to them if they see what their thoughts are of me going back on an antidepressant called sertraline, because I'd been taking off it when I was in Crow's Landing over the summer from my former psychiatrist in Toronto. And I was feeling better after I'd been on it. However, memory issues have come back, more so heavier dissociative states now that I'm in Ottawa. I could try and figure out why, but right now I'm not in any state to. So yeah, I just anyway, I thought that I just thought it was I thought it was unbelievable that I was able to get I got a doctor's appointment. I got an appointment with the doctor that I'm going to see for tomorrow. Tomorrow, after I had tried calling to make an appointment. That is unheard of in this country. But that's not the main issue I want to talk about here. So first off, what this video is going to be about is I want to, hopefully if I got through it fine enough, I want to talk about I briefly touched, I might retitle this video somewhat, the second part of Before Leaving the Cottage. I talk about my regrets somewhat. One of my, well, two of my regrets specifically, but mainly one. I'm going to touch on that more here. And just, oh yes, before any of that, I want to make this video also about, talking about what I've been wrong on, what I've been wrong about in the last little while, because there have been things that I've here and there mentioned about me being wrong, and just then like retracting my statement of what I said and just stating something else, with, well, new information, as you do when, well, as I morally think you should do when you're wrong, or you know that you're wrong, or you feel that you're wrong, and if you feel that, then, well, I think you should admit to it. Let's hope with my cognitive state right now, that's fine enough. Oh, yes, and before I do that, I'm going to make another video after this talking about what I'm going to say in the next video I make tonight. I was just gonna let it slide because I didn't feel, I haven't really fully, I mentioned people I follow on YouTube and stuff they've talked about on here before, especially with well, recently I talked about a YouTuber I found named Sun Michaud. Here's something I was wrong about. I was pronouncing his last name wrong. It's not Sun Mshu, which I thought because of the apostrophe, like, I didn't exactly know how to say it. I hadn't heard him say it full out. I thought it was Sun Mshu, but it's Sun Michaud. I talked about him for a point I was making in the social constructs aren't innately problematic, and should we view capitalism as just a different form of fascism in disguise video. And so yes, I've mentioned, I casually just mention people I follow, enjoy their content, people's content that I enjoy here on YouTube or on other platforms, as I did with the last video that I just posted relating to pornography. But I don't usually, okay, well, recently I've tried somewhat, other than the whole Avelina, Sabrina, and Gus Johnson thing where I had to correct stuff that I was saying, because I revised my opinion on it and I had talked about it previously. I don't typically, well, now I don't typically make videos, well, I guess fully like that. Oh, what am I saying? I don't know. I'm so disjointed right now that I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know what I'm trying to say with this. It's just recently I don't typically tend to comment, other than that one thing with Avelina, Sabrina, and Gus Johnson, on like YouTube controversy or drama, or like, even though I talk about it, I've said things briefly, but like a full in-depth like video on it, I haven't done that since the second Too Much Talking Twink relating to that situation. I haven't done that. But there's two YouTubers who I follow who, they said some things that for me just, and it relates to my whole morality dilemma. Oh, my hand is, that's just my hand cracking. Okay, it's shaking somewhat. Hey, neurology I've been learning about I was researching seizures. Maybe I'll learn what it's like to experience one firsthand if I end up having one. Uh, um, oh yes, in psychology, in my learning of psychology, I also have just, and this actually relates to one of the YouTubers I'm going to talk about. I just learned about. I have to look up actually really if it's classified in of itself as a mental disorder or as a sexual orientation that could be also considered a mental disorder in terms of like further infatuation, hybristophilia, which is the sexual attraction or potentially as well mental sexual mental disorder of being attracted to deviant behavior, extreme uh, deviant behavior, what is considered societally to be criminal or uh, like aggressively contrary to societal norms, I guess would be a way to put it. That'll relate to. I'm gonna talk about two YouTubers who I follow, named Joey B. Tunes and Illuminati, because they said both of them said things that I oh sorry, hold on. Okay, all right. Some people are just talking very loudly upstairs. Anyway, in my logical sense of ethics, I want to talk about it. I'm not gonna say I feel I have to, because I don't think you should need to talk. Well, maybe I'll rethink. I want to. I, I have a real problem with. Again, I don't blame anyone who takes ideas away from it because it is technically an art form, and I don't feel that that can be controlled, and they are entitled to their freedom of speech. It's just they clearly hold these opinions in their social life. Anyway, I'll get into that afterwards. So, in this video here, I want to just talk about things that I was wrong about, over the last little while. That would be a water pipe. The water system. Don't ask me where it's flowing to. So, I guess I'll just state that, let's go over first, something that I mentioned in my last video that I was wrong about. Oh, something that I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I split up into two parts, the pros and cons of No Nut November thing, where I was talking about something that I was wrong about, and then in that video itself, or the second one, the other half of it, no, it was the other half, when I was talking about one of the people I was recommending, that I was actually in that video wrong about what I said. First off, being in part 3 of Before Leaving the College, I mentioned something about the sugar substitute xylitol. I thought it was not the greatest for you as it was an artificial sweetener, and I thought it was mainly made from, well, artificial compounds, but apparently no, I was wrong. It's made from sugar alcohol base of sugar alcohol content of a plant base or plants. I don't know specifically which ones. And it was hypocritical of me to say that because, well, I don't think it's inherently entirely bad for you in terms of just indulging in certain things. And just simply being in terms of a sugar substitute, it is better for you, or it can be better for you, especially for people who have high sensitivity to, sugar content. it can be a better alternative for you in terms of glucose intake. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with sugar. It's a necessity for our bodies to produce energy, for our nervous systems and muscular systems to have, well, energy, and the circulatory system needs it to produce glycogen. It needs the glucose to produce glycogen for energy. But okay. So now with the last video I made, I was wrong about, and I've been wrong this whole time about ADHD. I talked about in relation to somebody that in terms of psychology, that it was classified as a behavioral disorder. That there is, though, now some dispute coming out of whether it should be classified as behavioral or technically mental. And for those of you who don't know what ADHD is, well, it's basically attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, where you have issues, or it can result in issues of, attention and focus, disruption of focus and concentration, and not having very low baseline stimulation of what they call it in psychology, compared to others who don't have the disorder. They have a very their baseline, yes, very low baseline stimulation, where external stimulants they don't have as much they don't have as much an effect on they don't properly okay, we all have a baseline stimulation in terms of in terms of our emotional state, in terms of focus and attention, and we take in information constantly and process it, basically in an attempt to keep our brains, not our brain, yes, our brains, to keep ourselves engaged in something. I guess it would be the better word. I don't think that's maybe the right word for it. But and there goes the heating. Heat circulation. So baseline stimulation is what we all have. Obviously everyone has different levels of what is stimulating to them in terms of just environmental sensory output or input. What stimulates their senses is what I'm trying to say. We all have it, but people with ADHD have a very low baseline stimulation. Or no, wait, hold on. Fuck, I was already wrong. I was already wrong in this fucking video. It not low baseline stimulation. What am I saying? The average person who has low baseline stimulation, it doesn't have disruptive attention and focus, has low baseline stimulation. It doesn't take much in terms of external factors to stimulate their concentration, and stimulate their senses, to engage them cognitively, I guess. No, not cognitively. There's a difference between, cognition relates to intelligence. It's just people with ADHD have high baseline stimulation, where it takes a lot more to properly stimulate them, because of, I believe, because, well, ADHD also really relates to overactive dopamine receptors, specifically within the temporal lobe, which controls focus and attention. So people with ADHD have higher baseline stimulation. God, I can't find that word. What I'm trying to say, what stimulates them sensory wise. So often people with ADHD will fidget, or can become, in terms of personality, very sporadic in terms of attention, especially in many young children who have ADHD. As this is why it's for a long time considered behavioral disorder, become very hyperactive. It's right in the name, hyperactivity. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And anyway, point being that's just a brief synopsis, or, well, synopsis is, I am so all over the place with words. Brief description of ADHD, the behavioral disorder. But in the last video, where I made a mistake, and where I should have, I feel like an idiot for this, I should have known this with my own research of psychology. In terms of the behavioral disorder, I called it a mood disorder, which I thought it had been classified as well as a mood disorder, because again, it affects, well, it can have an effect on your mood, which then again, now that I'm really taking a close look at it, really doesn't make, if it was classified as a mood disorder, that really doesn't make sense, because again, it's attention and focus that is disrupted with ADHD, and overstimulation of, well, excessive production of dopamine, well, chemical response, dopamine receptor, oh my god, all those words were wrong. Overactivity in dopamine receptors, especially within the temporal lobe, relating to attention concentration. And there's differences between concentration and what is in focus, what's known as attention, in a sense, or like what your attention is on. But anyway, I said it was a mood disorder, which for the longest time I had thought it was classified as that. I was wrong. That is not what it is classified as. I was right that it has been classified as a behavioral disorder. I've been right about that since I've known about that for a long time, researching it. But I was wrong about it being a mood disorder. And whether or not it ends up being classified as mental or behavioral, then, well, that remains to be seen in the psychiatric community. Okay, what else was I wrong? Oh, in my part 3 of Before Leaving the Cottage, I already edited the description and the comments of that video to correct something I said. It probably must have been because I was dissociating or something, but I said at one point near the beginning of the video that motivation and in terms of the, well, emotional response of motivation and apathy, which is lack of motivation, or, and also I guess they relate to lethargy, being lethargic. I said that that it was controlled by, that those emotional responses were controlled by the temporal lobe. That is not correct, and I must have just been thinking of, I must have cognitively I must have related it to something else. Maybe I was, as I was talking about it, maybe I was thinking about something in relation to maybe aggression or attention and focus, which are all primarily controlled by the temporal lobe, or maybe moral decision making. But no, it's the cingulate cortex that controls motivation and apathy, and as well, and to an extent, lethargy. Um, so I was wrong about that. What else? What else? Oh yes, this is absolutely one that I have to apologize for. In my This is something that I just learned. In my second part, in my second Made It to Peterborough video, um, and in my Exploring Gatineau Part 1 video, when I was talking about abortion rights, I've stated I'm not, even though I study sexology, and andrology and gynecology relate to it, I'm not as heavily versed in andrology or gynecology, even though there are things that I know, and with that I do speak about them. But I have made, which I did not know this, I made a mistake with how, well, a menstrual cycle. I talked about menstrual cycles in feminine people with feminine genitalia, how they work. When I was explaining something to do with Islam, in the second Peterborough video relating to how the Prophet Muhammad pretty well predicted the formation of the fetal cell within the uterus, within the womb. Go watch that video. Not going to explain much of that here, what that related to. I said about how sperm cell entering into the ovarian egg, and then traveling down towards the uterus, through the fallopian tube, to then begin the process of forming the fetal cell. I was wrong about that. I never knew this because, in relation to menstrual cycles and periods, I had actually, for the longest time, I had thought that well, the menstrual flow was, it is obviously shedding of the, well, the fertilized egg, shedding of the I don't think shell, no, shell, it's not shell, the lining of the let's call it the tissue or cell membrane of the fertilized egg, from within the ovaries, I thought, and shedding of it through the fallopian tube and, well, out through the, well, rest of the uterus and the vaginal tube, and past the cervix and all that, outward, which resulted in the blood, well, in bleeding from the shedding. However, I was wrong about that. I was wrong about that feminine anatomy. I didn't know that. This, again, proof of why I hate so much of the world's and the Canadian sexual education system and the schooling systems, that the fertilized egg actually travels down first through the fallopian tube, to the the uterus, and attaches onto the uterine lining, for a certain portion of time during the month, after fertilization, and then during menstrual flow, it the uterine lining itself and the egg as well shed itself, and that is what also flows out. But it's attached to that first, where the fertilized egg can come into contact with a sperm cell in the uterus. That's where the contact is made. And I was confused about that because when I originally, for a video I did a while back that related to ectopic pregnancies, I had, from what I looked up, ectopic pregnancies are, as I said before in that video that I made, pretty well. My hand's getting a cramp. Gotta adjust that. They're 100% fatal to the forming fetal cell, and highly dangerous to the person carrying the forming fetal cell. It is where the fertilized egg meeting with the sperm cell, the forming the forming fetal cell, it's where the fertilized egg and the sperm cell connect and start. The fetal cell starts forming within the fallopian tube, in which is connection from the ovaries to the uterus. Yes, just that area. And where it starts forming, and that can cause, well, if it keeps growing, can rupture destroy the ovary, rupture and tear the fallopian tube, and absolutely cause internal bleeding, and is almost always fatal if not treated for the person carrying the fetus bleeding out from the inside. And then I got curious, wondering, like, when I found out this information, I thought, well, wait a minute, because I thought I had, from the information I had before, that was the process of menstruation, and I thought, well, wait a minute, then how, if it's not that the sperm cell makes its way to the ovarian egg from the fertilized ovarian egg from the ovaries, then downward through the fallopian tube, attaching to the uteral lining, to form the cell, then how would it make sense for it to be stuck in the fallopian tube when forming? And then I thought, oh, okay, maybe it's, and I haven't looked this up to confirm it yet, but it could be, is that there is a already formed fertilized egg from the ovaries that was making its way down to the uteral lining, but it got stuck within the fallopian tube, and then during some sort of sexual activity with someone who has masculine genitalia, and a sperm cell made its way to said fertilized egg within the fallopian tube, and then started, that one that was stuck within the tube, it made its way to it and then started forming. That makes sense in that context, with that knowledge of information, that would make, I thought it wouldn't make sense for that. No, it does make sense, if I am correct about that, unless there's another way for the ectopic pregnancy to begin its process, then I have to research that. But in terms of when I was discussing female anatomy, or the feminine, the anatomy of genders with feminine genitalia and reproductive system, I was wrong about that. So don't listen to like only a portion of what I'm saying about that, in relation to what I was discussing in those two videos. So yes, I was wrong about that. What else? No, wait a minute. I was, here's one. In my, this is not so much, well, I guess, yes, it means, yes, I was wrong. In my opinion, I was wrong, about this. This was hypocritical of me to say, now that I realize. I didn't fully, well, at least slightly hypocritical. In my fifth part of Exploring Ottawa, when I was talking about the homeless crisis, and homelessness in general, why I think people should try and have empathy for the homeless and the issues that they face. There was the issue of people brought up, where I acknowledged that there are some people who are nomadic homeless, who choose to be, or have chosen a more nomadic lifestyle. And then I brought up the point of, well, most people don't. However, I should have clarified, and I can't fully remember if I did at some point somewhat clarify that just because most people don't doesn't negate, just because most people do or don't doesn't mean that shouldn't be the argument point. As I talked about abortion, the whole, how many people of a more conservative mindset believe that, which this, I even acknowledge, wasn't an argument for whether or not it should be legalized, and just trying to clarify that no, most people actually don't feel this way. Like, using abortion as a contraceptive method, which is literally impossible. But anyway, I said even if someone had that mindset going into it, I said most people don't. And even if like they did, is the thing though, they should have the right to access it, in my opinion. And in terms of homelessness, it doesn't matter. It really shouldn't matter whether majority of people do choose or not. There are those who don't, and these systems that we have in place economically fail them. They very much do. I talked about in relation to capitalism as an eco-political system, things of the sort. But there are many who, and I'm going to reiterate that most don't choose that. But even so, even if they did, it doesn't matter really, because the system is failing. It is failing at great length still. Even if it was most, there is clearly a large majority that, even if they were the least, that suffer from the system itself being completely faulty, and not providing any sort of stable income for those people, or causing unequal redistribution of wealth and flimsy distribution of wealth, I will say, because I fucking hate capitalism by my logical stance. So I shouldn't have come from that standpoint, I guess I'll say. Or maybe I should have elaborated more, is what I'll say. What else? Oh, yes. In one of my before leaving the college videos, it might have been the last one, when I was talking about my route coming up to my extended relative's cottage, I said that I contradicted myself, I realized, because I said in that video that I had taken major routes to get up there, and then closer to Peterborough was smaller country roads. And then I said in another video, taking major routes and like major roadways mainly to get up here, which I'll clarify, it's not really okay. It's not exactly, I guess, contradicting, but I just didn't. I'm starting to realize, I guess, with a lot of these videos, the stuff that I don't, I'm very worried about this always. It's not that I go against always, not going against what I say, it's that I'm forgetting to put in this important detail, or I'm leaving it out in some way, or my wording is wrong, where I leave out that important bit of information that might make what I said before sound contradicting, which, well, right now I can't fix that, but I can try my best to not do that. But I guess that's what mainly happens. I don't fully know, but so to clarify, it was I took major routes going up to Peterborough. I took smaller side roads getting into Peterborough, and then the situation happened where my motorized bike popped a flat tire getting close to Lakefield, Ontario, and then yada yada yada, all that happened. Oh, interestingly enough, this is really just funny. I found out I had completely incorrectly titled that video, like the when I was in Lakefield the first time with my motorized bike, Timmy. I had thought I had titled it, and for all these months I thought I had titled it Made It to Lakefield, Ontario, with a nice scrumptious scoop of cosmic irony. So I talked about like the whole theory of cosmic irony in it, which I'm going to clarify. I don't actually, technically, I don't believe that there is such thing as cosmic irony. I think I might have mentioned that in my video, one of my before leaving the college videos, relating to the philosophy or genre of horror, really, cosmicism. I don't, obviously, like, something can be like considered like cosmically ironic, like as if everything in the universe pitted it so that this wouldn't happen and yet that thing happened. But well, my situation was not a sort of thing like that. But I had titled it, apparently though what I had titled it, it must have been like autocorrect or something. I didn't realize it at the time. Was made it to Lakefield, Ontario with a nice scrumptious schematic something, which I didn't know what the word schematic meant. And I was like, when I saw that, going back to rewatch that video, I don't know how I didn't notice it before. I was like, what the hell is this? I did not title this, and I thought I had misremembered, but I was like, I got worried, but then I was like, oh, must have been autocorrect. And apparently schematic is referring to like scooter mechanics, like I guess somewhat relating to my motorized bike, even though it wasn't a motorized scooter. Like the structure, like in engineering, like the structure of the metal structure of like a kid's toy scooter, or even I guess motorized scooters, schematic engineering, I guess, or yeah, it was schematic. Yeah, schematic. Anyway, so that was something. But okay, what else? Well, I added the descriptions of some of my Exploring Ottawa videos, parts 5 and no. Yep, parts 5 and 6. Yep. As there was at a point where I said I was in when I was in Gloucester, no, it was the Vanier district of Ottawa. When I was walking through it, I said that it was in the miswording. I said it was in the western end of the city. It's completely wrong. It's in the eastern end. And then the next video, I forget where exactly I said it, but I edited the comments, and I said at one point that a certain district, I believe, was the eastern end, when I was really, in reality, no, it was in the western half of Ottawa. So just mix the two sides, two directional sides. Okay, there's that. In my explaining my philosophies video, no, was it that one or was it the? Yes, it was that one. At a point, and I edited the comments again, where I said I was an anti-disestablishmentarianism. God, my wording. I was an anti-disestablishmentarian when that was wrong. I said one of my philosophies was anti-disestablishmentarianism. No, it's disestablishmentarianism. I'm not an anti-disestablishmentarian. I'm a disestablishmentarian, which basically it means that disestablishmentarianism. Okay, establishmentarianism is the philosophical belief that you follow the word of a church organization or a religious organization. You follow the word of that organization and what that organization dictates, not really even so much the religion itself, but the organization. Disestablishmentarianism is that you believe that basically God and the state, or like religion and governmental policies and governance in terms of like a country or any sort of land area or over a group of people, just as a society, should remain separate. Not abolishment of religion, but separate. That that religion and government should not mix in terms of like policy, like policy enforcement. Now, obviously, with people's moral beliefs and religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, that'll have an effect on your, well, in terms of philopsychology and your emotional state, it'll have an effect on your moral decisions for law enforcement, and like or can have an influence in many ways on your what you think should be implemented in terms of government. But in terms of like not the people who believe in the religious worship, but just the the doctrines of a religious text or a religious organization and what they preach should remain out of government, basically. So just like a separate disestablishmentarianism is a separation of the church or the mosque or the synagogue or temple or whatever else, any other place of worship, and the, well, a governmental body of some kind over a society. So, and anti-disestablishmentarianism is the opposite of that, where you do believe that that a religious organization should have influence over a governmental body in terms of, like, say, a theocracy, or like in a theocratarian type way. Or also, I guess, well, no, like, well, theologian would be, well, just in a theocracy type, like anti-disestablishmentarianism is basically theocracy in a way, where it's, or, well, no, actually, well, that's in terms of like theocracy is religious doctrine having complete influence over like final decisions made in a governmental system, whereas anti-disestablishmentarianism is just like, no, it should be in, and my phone is dying, should be a heavy influencing factor, I guess, is a better way to differentiate the two. But anyway, I meant to say I was a disestablishmentarian. Okay, what else? Okay, now I guess we're getting into more things that I've changed where I guess somewhat changed my stance on. In terms of what was it? Okay. Okay, hold on a sec. I gotta get my train of thought. Okay, got it back. In one of my before leaving the cottage videos, and this relates to my questions of existentialism and morality. Well, and obviously sociology. I said in one of them, when I was talking about my whole dilemma with what I've been going through in terms of my philosophies and all that, and my perception of the world, I said that I obviously logically was talking about how I believe that things can change and get better, and that progress could be made societally, whilst having your own self-interest as well. And I believe that people can change in a multitude of regards. However, though, when it comes to my questioning of things, that's what it ideally, logically would be. I did say it, though, at a point, can it really have, I wondered, have things really gotten better, or have they just, I said, have things really gotten better over the course of history, or is it just have most systemic and systematic issues, or just social issues in general, taking on a subtler form? Which, from what I've talked about, I don't know why I said it in that way, because if just going based on how I worded that question, then absolutely yes. Like, I don't know what I was saying there. Is like, yes, they have absolutely taken on a subtler form. Absolutely, they haven't fully gone away. They've taken on a more subtle form of the multitude of different sociological issues, discrimination, discrimination, prejudice, stereotyping in many senses of different groups of people, methods of basic, governmental influence from larger national superpowers in smaller nations of the world, basically inciting proxy wars within them and political disrupt, psychological health issues, all of this, like, have things just taken on a cellular form in certain ways, in many ways, yes. And I say absolutely yes. I don't know why that's kind of like, for me, that's a rhetorical question. That yes, absolutely they have. But I guess what I meant to say was, instead of that, will things ever really get better, or is it just kind of, will things inevitably just fall back into a subtler form or into complete disarray and get worse in a multitude of regards? Is what I meant to say, I guess, is the better way to put it. Because yes, absolutely, multitude of things have taken on just, I'd say that, like, political and just social performativism and performative activism has taken, like, is at the height of how it is, higher than it's ever been probably in human history, is right now. Maybe not social, like, just in terms of immediate and external social circles for people. I generally, as I've talked about in videos before, with herd mentality and histrionic personality disorder and things of the sort, histrionic tendencies and traits, that there are many people who care about their image and will put on a persona to just appease others' viewpoint of them, to try and make it so that their image is to their liking, is what I'm trying to say, is a way to put it. I've talked about all that before. So I shouldn't have worded it that way. Oh, here's another thing that I should actually clarify. So I've talked about, and this is actually why I was getting upset before this. I had thought I had said this in one of my videos. Maybe I have in one of the before leaving the cottage videos, or maybe maybe I'm confusing it with me just thinking out loud when I was staying at the cottage, talking to myself in relation to, like, going over my research. Obviously, I research psychology and things of the sort. And in psychology, it can be broken down into mainly 3 sections, in terms of, like, the emotional state, that being mentality, personality, and behavior. And obviously, they all bleed into one another. I swear I have definitely, like, yes, I've talked about how they all bleed into one another, or heavily overlap. But okay. And actually, I'm going to, right now, just quickly, before all that, in case I didn't fully go over it. I've gone over these things, but in case I didn't give as good a description, what is, like, each, like, 1 second. Sorry again, just had to pause that. So I'm going to go over just quickly each, like, quadrant, I guess, of it. Ow! Great. Yeah, I gotta trim these as well. God, ow. Oh, did I cut my nose? Maybe. Oh. Okay, I'll go over, like, and it's odd, I said this in, like, one of my last videos is that I want to do more like talking about like I should have clarified because I already talk. This was odd for me to say as well. I already talk about neurology and psychology on here and have for the longest while. But I think what I meant to say there was in the when I was in the tunnel in the last two videos, what I meant to say was I meant to say like do actual like explanation videos for in-depth explanation videos for psychology and neurology, basically, other than me mentioning and explaining like it along with all the other shit that I'm doing. Okay, anyway, so mentality, personality, behavior, 3 quadrants in psychology: mentality, or the emotional or psychological state, the psyche; mentality being our cognitive thought process, and just mental imagination, and just our cognitive thoughts, our internal thoughts, and our thought process within our, well, cerebrums. How our thought process how it functions, how our thought process functions within neuroscience. Personality, it's interesting. There's actually still somewhat debate of what personality technically is. And I've talked about when I was psychoanalyzing my own personality in the ego death video. Things similar to, well, I was talking about what I thought were my personality characteristics. But personality, it's more defined as being your projected cognitive thought process and plus behavioral tendencies. So almost like you can think of it almost like a bridgeway between mentality and behavior. And persona, which I have talked about before, but I've never actually fully, I don't think, mentioned like what is really the difference between personality and persona, as persona also relates to gender expression in that regard. Is that persona is more so like in terms of personification, how you present your personality to your personality tendencies and traits, or if you have a personality disorder, how you present it to other individuals, other people around you in a social environment. Whereas or as I guess it's known, I guess what Carl Jung would have named it the persona. And there goes the heating system again. And in terms of, but personality is just your projected cognitive thought process plus behavioral tendencies or traits, or in the bridgeway, not really behavioral disorder, though like the disorder parts of it do make their way. They most likely make their way into aspects of your personality. It's how it's just projected in general, even when you're alone. Like, say, if you were talking to yourself, or just not even talking to yourself, just how it's. This is why it's a little debated, like what exactly is counted as personality in psychological science. But this is like the general agreed upon, like it's projected cognitive thought process and behavioral traits and all that. It's what is projected outward, or what is just. It's hard to explain in that regard, because obviously if you're not doing anything, well, it's even, I guess, somewhat in how your just demeanor, how your demeanor is as well as part of your personality, and or I guess, well, also relates to behavior. This is why I'm saying it all bleeds together. Anyway, and behavior is, well, what is your acted out behavior, basically. What is your actions, basically, your enacted. Just trying to think of another word for behavior right now. Your enacted, like, not movement, because, well, movement is, well, yeah, that relates to behavior, but Your... God. Fucking word finding issues. Great. Your actions, let's just say your actions, because that's all I can think of right now. What are we at? 8%. So, and also, here's another thing with psychology in terms of personality disorder, behavioral disorder, and even as well mental disorder. Most often, and I believe I've said this before, and I know I worry about this. It's just because I can't. Would like not to have forgotten what I may have said for, like, even if I know I believe it, whether I said it in a video so I don't reiterate it, take up time. Most often, if you have one disorder, you in terms of mentality, personality, and behavior, you most likely have another one, or at the very least have heavy traits of another one. That can be within, like, the realm of personality, mentality, or behavior, or it could be bleeding over. If you have a personality disorder, you most likely could have a behavioral disorder, or with a mental disorder, possibly also behavioral disorder, or personality as well, and it varies, like, back and forth is the thing. I'm not going to give examples here right now, because I want to keep on talking about what I'm talking about. In terms of okay, here's another thing that I've here are some more things that I'm I'm going to talk about this more of not just what I think was wrong about what would have been, I guess, hypocritical for me. Sorry, my foot is shaking. I'm kind of going like that, just to do that thing, like, as a nervous, or when you're well, it's almost like not a tick, it's an impulse to well, I guess this could count as some form of behavior to when you're bored, or God, I can't even think of it right now. What the fuck this is called? Like, you just gyrating your leg up and down when you're anxious or bored, or it could be a form of stimulation. Many people with ADHD do this as a form of self-stimulation. Anyway, I'm gonna try and stop it. Let me go over some more of my regrets. As I said earlier, I may retitle that second part of Before Leaving the Cottage, as I really only went over, like, one or two of my regrets, but further in depth on my regrets. I just want to talk about them and think of. It really is depressing to me how I get topics for these videos, think of them, try to articulate them well, and then I can't. And it, like, everything gets fucked up and fucked over. That accompanied with the existential and morality crises. So, fantastic combination. I really love it. I want to talk about my regrets. So I feel it relates to all of this. So, firstly, my regret about the kidnapping in Toronto that I And I'm gonna have to plug my phone in a sec. That I nothing to stop. How I still logically, by my morals, feel I would have stepped in. Wanted to step in and do something, and always told myself that I would in a situation of that sort. And I feel that you should if something is getting to a detrimental extent in the immediate. And it doesn't even, and I talked about it when I was leaving Toronto, how I saw the kidnapper and the victim again. And once again, when they were in a verbal and physical altercation, did nothing other than phone the police as an attempt to deal with it. And it doesn't even matter, like, and again, people have also told me, like, when I've spoken to people about this over this whole little while, on my journey so far up here, and after the incident happened, well, and after, like, I saw them again, well, they clearly knew each other, so yeah, they clearly knew each other, so, like, nothing wasn't a major issue. No, it was. It doesn't matter if they fucking knew each other. What if I hadn't seen them again that night? Like, that other night that I saw them. What if I hadn't seen them again? I would have never known. It was, like, pure coincidence that I was, after I got into a fight with one of my coworkers from one of my former places of work while still in Toronto, and I sat at I was sitting at a bench in the area near my place of work, and where I had initially seen the kidnapping. It was pure coincidence that I ran into them again. Pure coincidence. If I had not been sitting there, I would not have seen them again. Or if I hadn't walked over to that area, I would not have seen them again, most likely. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, like, that I can, have a... And plus, I can't have relief because logically with my morals, I don't like the fact that, the other person was abusing the victim. Hello. I believe in trying to actually help people. I do. And, as again, I don't believe, and even still, logically don't believe that humans are innately selfish entirely. We have selfish tendencies and selfless tendencies. I don't believe that human desires innately come entirely from a place of just self-gratification. There is proof to this even when I get into conversations with people on this. There is proof of people doing what would be philosophically considered altruistic acts with no one knowing that they did it. Like, there have been, right now I can't pull them off the top of my head, but there are definitely cases I know of that you can point to where people have done something, none of this subconscious, like, thought of, okay, maybe if they are histrionic and they think, how well, maybe this will make myself look good in other people's eyes, make myself look righteous. There are people who have done things where it took, like, decades for I guess I'll say historians or investigators, I guess more crime related things, or, well, not crime related things, unsolved cases in terms of, like, unsolved murder or in terms of, like, archaeological, like, findings, past civilizations, or in, like, things dug up, being uncovered from more ancient wars, or World War One or World War Two, or acts committed in like civil wars in Africa, things, or in Democratic Congo, Libya, things of the sort, or Central African Republic, or back during the Chinese Civil War, during early in the 1940s and the Chinese Revolution. But anyway, there are people who have done things to save others and help others who never got any recognition for what they did. No one knew what they did, or a majority of people didn't know what they did. So that to me is proof that we aren't innate. Oh, my hand will not stop shaking, so I'm going to switch arms. This is an odd position. There is proof that people have done things that no one knows about that helped someone else, or would have helped some number of other people without them ever really finding out about it. And I ask you this to anyone who actually believes, like, oh, you do something empathetic, or you do something compassionate or something generous for another person out of pure internal selfishness in some small form, because it makes you feel good, which there are people who at the very least argue that's not innately a bad thing, even if it was. Even though I disagree with it, let me ask you something. Let me give an example. If you were in the middle of nowhere, let's say you're in what's a location I could pick? You're in the Amazon rainforest of Ecuador. You're in Ecuador. The Amazon rainforest touches yes, it does. It touches the eastern half of it, a portion of it. If you're in the Amazon rainforest of Ecuador, or the rainforest in Ecuador, you're in the middle of nowhere, absolute middle of nowhere. This is going to be an outlandish example, but I'm just posing this as like a moralistic question to people. If you were out in the middle of nowhere, there was an atomic bomb next to you, or a hydrogen bomb, more deadly in some regard, a nuclear bomb, or a nuclear device of any kind that it was capable of. What's the percentage? 1%. Okay. All right. Sorry about the swapped camera angle or whatever. If it looks swapped, I don't know. I just let my phone get a bit of charge, and I took a few minutes to take a breather, calm down, eat some bran muffins with peanut butter, and keep talking on this plot point, or this plot point. This point that I'm trying to make. Let's say, from some outlandish example, this whole nuclear device situation, and you knew that it was going to, if it goes off in the middle of the rainforest of Ecuador, it's going to incinerate essentially the entirety of Ecuador, its entire land territory. It's going to incinerate the neighboring country of Colombia, most of the neighboring country of Peru. It's going to incinerate the entirety of Bolivia, because it's going to do mass harm to. It's going to completely, ecologically and just in terms of people, like casualties, going to kill millions of people. It's going to absolutely destroy all of Ecuador and every country in its surrounding proximity. And it's going to also do mass damage to the southern half of North America, or the southern half of Central America. It's going to just wreak havoc on Panama, Nicaragua, and all that. It's probably reach Honduras as well, and El Salvador in some capacity. And it's going to do a mass destruction to like majority of like the northwestern half of Brazil. And it's going to kill millions. This nuclear device that's basically this doomsday device, I guess we're going to call it. It's kind of like the doomsday device from, let's say it's like a device like the doomsday device from Doctor Strangelove, the Stanley Kubrick film. If any of you even know what that is from my generation. Yeah, yes, there are definitely, obviously there are. What am I talking about with that? Anyway, you're in the middle of the rainforest. This device is going to go off. You are the only one who knows how to stop it. And you're not going to... Even if you make it out of the scenario alive, most average people are not going to believe you that it happened, that you stopped the detonation of this device. Even people who logically thought and said, okay, this could potentially be possible, they will still never fully know whether it was completely true or not. Would you stop the device from going off? And now somebody's probably going to say like, oh, well, it makes me feel internally, it's self-gratifying because I feel good about having saved the world even if nobody knows about it. Okay, here's another extent. The whole internal self-gratifying thing. Let's say you weren't going to make it out of it alive. It was either, in that context, it was you or, and I'm not advocating, this is not me advocating for like a whole lesser amount of casualties versus the higher amount of casualties. A casualty is a casualty, and I still think one death is just as bad as 100 million. Logically speaking, actually. So, just basically, you will not make it out alive. You're the only one who could stop it. You will die a very horrible and painful death from being exposed to nuclear radiation at high levels of nuclear radiation, and there's no spare bottles of potassium iodine supplements anywhere near you. So you're not gonna, you see the compounds in your epidermis and flesh are going to start just eroding off of it's going to start disintegrating off of your bones completely, off your skeletal structure, then reach your nervous system and all that. It would be a very painful death for you until, as I talked about in my third part of leaving the cottage, the last few moments before death are peaceful, as you won't be able to cognitively, the nervous system, feel pain or recognize what fear is. Anyway, leading up to your death, it'll be very painful. But you still go forth with stopping the device, and no one will ever, and let's say no one will ever know that you did this act. No one will ever know that you stopped almost entire worldly destruction. Would you still go through with it? I logically would say that yes, there are people with the selfless tendencies that we have would go through with that act. Now, obviously, there are those who wouldn't, but in terms of the whole internal self-gratification thing, it really doesn't hold much weight in terms of, at least much evidence from what I see in terms of psychology, how it emotionally gratify you. And maybe it would, obviously, if I don't think, okay, at the very least, you can't argue this, at least from my stance, logically. Well, I'm sure you can't actually argue it. Logically, even if we are internally selfish, which I don't believe, we act in selfless ways and selfish ways. The very least. And I don't know. I still don't see enough evidence to say that we are all internally self-serving. Even if our self-gratification helps others. Now, whether you choose to, even if it was, whether you choose to live by a more egoistic or hedonistic or altruistic or self-maintaining altruistic way, well, that's for you to decide. It's just, I don't see evidence of that. Or let's say this. If you were in a facility that was full of mass murderers, serial killers, genocidal maniacs, things of the sort, there was a device that was going to destroy the facility that these people were in, kill all of them and you. But you could stop said device from going off, save all those people in there, no matter how manically sociopathic they are, and murderous and aggressive. You have the ability to stop it, but it would kill you. And there's no alternative to the two. It's either all you die or you die, and the rest survive. Would you go through with stopping the device? This is a genuine question I'm asking to people. Would you go through with stopping it? Anyway, I feel I had more to that point there, but back to what I was saying about the kidnapping. That's a regret of mine. Still absolutely hold it. Very, very much hold it with me severely as something that I despise that I did it. That I didn't try to step in. I wanted to. I was literally only 3 feet from them when that happened. 3 feet. It's another regret of mine. Okay, here. Yeah, fuck it. I'm gonna mention this. I said in my Made It to Ottawa video that I wouldn't keep mentioning what happened with my extended relatives, how they betrayed my trust. Fuck it. Fuck it. No, honestly, fuck it. Yeah, I'm not dwelling on it like some people may have told me, but I'll fucking talk about it. No, actually, no. You know what? I do believe that, yeah, I have been thinking about it. That is a part of what has happened, and I've reflected on all of it. So I guess you could count that in some form as dwelling upon it. So fuck it. I don't care. If that's dwelling, then that's healthy in my opinion. That's fine. With what they did and what other people have done in relation to that, fine. I'm not going to ignore that. Why the hell would I ignore that? That's part of me analyzing human nature on this whole venture of mine. So why the fuck would I ignore that? So, yeah, the people who betrayed my trust, still don't forgive them. Logically don't forgive them. I don't wish massive spite upon any of them, or harm. I wish they would self-reflect or realize what they did to me. But in terms of me leaving the cottage a mess, no context, go watch the Change of Plans video and the Made It to Ottawa video if you want more information on that. In terms of me leaving the cottage a mess, I said even in the Made It to Ottawa video, maybe I regret leaving it a mess partially. I regret making it a further mess than it already was. I still don't regret not cleaning up the mess that was already there, that I was in the process of cleaning up. What I should have done, I think, is just drop everything and leave it as is, or as it was. I shouldn't have. I was in a fit of anger, and still say my anger is justified, damn well justified. But I should have just left it as it was. I shouldn't have made it a further mess. I should have just left it for whatever was left for them to deal with. So I regret that. And I also, in terms of the actual, like, how everything transpired. I don't regret making a video on the topic of them betraying my trust. Obviously, I kept it more. Obviously, I said people in my family, like, in relation to me. I kept it anonymous in terms of their positions and names and all that, and tried to with gender. But I regret how I went about it. I'm not deleting those videos. I'm keeping them up for A, my remembrance, B, as demonstration of, for anyone going through something similar, maybe to this, or having similar experience, can maybe relate to it and find some peace or knowledge from it. Like peace in knowing that there are others that have experienced similar things. And just, again, for me to reflect on it, and it is a part of my history, so I don't want to delete it for that reason. I can't delete my past, so it's another reason I do this channel. Why I don't delete videos. It's part of it. It happened. I can just not list them in a playlist, but, well, anyway, it happened. So, anyway, in relation to that video, I regret how I went about making that video. And I was in the fit of anger that I was in. Still justified, but still. I should have more. I was so, after everything that had been building up for 4 whole months, and an entire, pretty well, like, I'll say a whole 7 months, with the 4 months included. Like, okay, 4 months include 7 months, like, months prior to that, prior to me leaving Toronto, with everything that had been happening with people in my household. It was just, and with my skewed sense of morality, which it still is, I just said, fuck it. And maybe this will actually get them to realize their problematic behavior. But what I should have done, I think, is decide on whatever means I was going to use to get to Ottawa. Whether that was to just take off in my side-by-side in the night to the countryside, or wait for a person I knew to come get me, which eventually, well, worked out with the latter decision. I should have waited till I got to Ottawa or close to Ottawa and make a video detailing things of an experience I had with people I knew, I guess. Something that happened in relation to, well, with all the details, it's kind of not, there's only so many ways that I could keep it anonymous. There really is only so many ways that you can do that. So, do I regret how I went about the video? Yeah. The Made It to Ottawa video and the rant of mine while at my last day at my extended relative's cottage. Yes. Do I regret leaving? No. Do I regret making a further mess of the place? Yep. I do regret that. Don't regret the half that I was cleaning up. What I should have done was just leave that bit. Should have just left it. Should have just dropped what I was doing and was like, fuck it. How the place is how it is. They can deal with the rest. In some form of peaceful retaliation, protest. So I regret that. It's another one. I regret not, on the topic of people in my former household in Toronto and all the strife they had put me through and problems I was having with them, the absolute chaos that household was and still is in the last, when at off points when I've talked to them. I regret not leaving that house immediately when I turned 18. I regret that, like, just not going. Where? I don't know. In the city where? I don't know. Most likely to a friend's. But just going. Now, I still logically believe people can change behavior-wise. There's people in psychology who say, there are those who are pessimists who say people won't change. I'll have more of a video on like pessimism and the philosophy of pessimism. And in relation though to personality, even my former psychiatrist told me that I was worried about the potentiality of personality changes, somewhat, or problematic personality changes with the sertraline medication that side effects of the sertraline that they were putting me on. But they told me that, well, your personality won't change. Maybe your behavior will change or things of the sort, and that's why we moderate, or your mental state. I still don't logically agree with that. I find it so strange how people say that we can't change, and yet we've definitely, logically, I feel, changed from when we were children. Our personalities and behavior, in many regards, for a lot of people, have not stayed the same and have further developed, or they've further developed a disorder, or at the very least further developed traits that they initially had, or characteristics that they initially had. Anyway, though, the reason I regret not leaving that household immediately when I turned 18 because one of my beliefs is that I obviously don't think that legally you can force someone into changing. I don't think that you can, if I force like pressure, not even pressure, just force someone into changing. You can only tell them what they are doing, what they are causing, and ask them to please recognize this and try and change your ways. In terms of your personality, your persona, or behavior that you're causing, acts just in your social life, how it's affecting people around you, if you're becoming encroaching. That leads into the problem, I guess, morality for me is when I was having major issues with them. I was fighting nonstop. When I basically just told them, okay, my boundaries was to a point where I said, if you don't even show me that you're attempting to change, you don't even try to, I'm gone. I'm leaving. I'm moving out. Even when I was in school still, before I dropped out of high school, I was looking at potential studio apartments to rent. Logically, though, I realized on the budget that I was on for my job in Toronto, would not have been able to afford that at all. So, but even then, did I not just do the same thing? Did I not do what I logically... Was that cognitive dissonance for me? Not just... Is that not, in a sense, forcing them to change? I don't fully know anymore. I really, truly don't. Logically, I would say no, because obviously I'm not... God, my coccyx tailbone is getting sore on what I'm sitting on. Logically, I would say no, because at a certain point, I am for you using your own ego and sense of self to stand up for yourself. To say, hey, enough. You are causing this amount of detriment. Please stop. And I did it because I didn't want to just abandon them. I wanted us to be able to live, for as cliche as this sounds, in harmony. Just coincide well. Actually be able to not cause each other problems and detriment, and still behave in ways that were our own choices, but weren't putting overbearing control on one another. That's my libertarian ideals. But I can't help but think, is that really not me? Am I not just doing the same thing? I guess this relates to a whole entire dilemma with everything in the world. Sociology, psychology, human behavior, all of it. We talk morally about doing what, and I've talked about the double standards thing, of non-negative double standards. That I do think there are things that function in a double standard way. That's unavoidable. But in some form, then I guess we can't say it's all bad or problematic, because you're using that thing in a way, not in its entirety, or you're doing something similar in a way. I'll have a video talking more about this, I guess, at some point. It's just... Bottom line is, right now, another regret of mine. I regret not just leaving that household immediately when I turned 18. There's another regret of mine that relates to it. This relates in some facet to Toronto. In Toronto, oh, my hand's getting a cramp. Within Toronto, I regret, as me having left the city, I left my sibling behind. I don't know if people have picked up on that by this point, as I mentioned them a few points, slight points throughout this channel. I left them behind. Because I felt I had to go. Okay, I don't know if my sibling actually watches a lot of my content. I know people in my former household do. To my sibling, if they see it, I'm very, and I've said this before, I said it in my, what was it, my first, it was one of the two of my Peterborough videos. They were not the major causer of this. They weren't, of all my issues ultimately. They weren't. I'm just sorry. I'm very, very excruciatingly sorry for having just left. Well, I left, I said goodbye to you, obviously. I, on multiple days, came to see you while I was preparing for the week that I was sleeping on the streets of Toronto, gathering necessities to move further up north to Crow's Landing, or close to that area at least, or like just going further up north, whether I chose to stay there or not. I'm so terribly sorry. I really do wish that I had, and for so long have wished that I had closer relations with you. I think this is kind of a fault on both of our parts. I'm sorry for... Well, I know I did, obviously I tried to talk with you at points and connect more with you, I guess would be the better way to say it. I wish we spent more time hanging out and just... I wish I had a closer connection with you. Every time over the phone now, it just... And I call them, I talk to them when I can. It seems so... The word would just be awkward between us, and just... my word finding issues right now. I can't find proper words. I'm just... I wish I could have known you more and hung out with you more. And did any sort of activities, talk more with you about, helped more with you about your own, helped you with more of your own problems while I was there. Or just talked with you, had fun hanging out with you. I wish. And that's why I actually relating to that, and I'm not... Okay, well, this, I do think this was fault of yours. It's just... This is why when we went... It's more of a personal detail, I'm not going to give away too many details. We went downtown Toronto during the summer for a day, to the Eden Centre for a reason that I won't state. Via GO train during the summer of 2021. And you got very upset about something, and you were very just annoyed for the rest of the time, and I was getting annoyed with you. And the reason I was getting annoyed with you for being very... just after something not going the way it was intended to go, becoming very dismissive and just brushing off so much of everything else. The reason I was so upset by that was because I thought it would be a chance to know you better, I guess. I know I've known you my whole life. It's just something fell off in the last few years. It felt like fell off in terms of connection. And that's also why I was very mad at you for something regarding my will and last statement that I have in my phone and had printed out before, which I don't even know if the last statement, I don't even know if I should keep that. There's so much that's confused with me now. It's like all of my artistic creation except for my games. In terms of YouTube, I'm never happy with most of this shit. Any of it. For the most part. But that's also the reason I was so mad. So very, very angry. And I'm sorry that I became my own traits of egotism. I became very egotistical during my suicidality. Well, obviously, the point I wasn't thinking in terms of, well, logically, a mental disorder of depression, becoming very, with the suicidality and the anhedonia and lack of, joy, I became very I behaved very self-centeredly. Which is a common, symptom of being heavily depressive and suicidal. Well, those committing a suicidal act could be argued as a more self-centered act. And that's not me trying to shame anyone who's committed suicide. I'm just, you know what I'm saying. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. Whether or not I agree, and even at the time I agreed with many of your philosophies on life, for at the very least one thing, now that's kind of become skewed, whether I agree with that or not. At points I have tried to practice it, what you told me. All I can just keep saying is I'm sorry, and I can't come back to Toronto. Right now, at the very least, I cannot, maybe even ever, come back to Toronto. I can't. For my own sanity, my own psychological health, and my views of the world, I need to be out here experiencing and seeing human life functioning. Whether in one system or another system, just in systems, seeing how human beings around different parts of the world, or here just in Canada, just beyond my own backyard. I'd always believed in looking to other parts of the world in terms of researching and learning from other people's experiences. Don't just look in your own backyard. Research and look in your own backyard, or if you are traveling, look around and see from other people's backyards. Well, now I need to actually be in other people's backyards is the best analogy I can give for this. I need to see it. So, what I'm trying to say is I love you dearly, and I hope, at least over the phone, or just long distance, we can in some way connect further. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. And I'm not gonna, right now, I'm not gonna cry on camera again. I have iffy issues now with... I ultimately don't care, as I've said before, I don't care if you cry on camera. If you're actually getting emotional and you're not being performative with it, obviously you can't fully know from the other side of a parasocial relationship fully, but if you deduce enough, fine. I don't have a problem with it in that regard. I have a problem if you are very clearly trying to manipulate and, well, being disingenuous, just trying to only trying to gain sympathy for views, or to seem as if you are the victim in a scenario where you're not. Dude. Water pipes again. I'm sorry. Moving on to another regret. This will be the last regret I talk about right now before I discuss... Oh, actually, wait. No. No, I know a point I'm going to bring up in talking about the two YouTubers that I want to after this video. No, I'm going to save that one. I'm going to save that one because it actually relates. If I remember to. It relates to those. Another regret. This is one that I've been feeling a lot recently. I'm not going to reiterate everything I feel about how platonic intimacy, relationship status, polyamory, monogamy. I'm not going to even reiterate it this time. I know I cover my points. I'm sporadic with it as shit in the histrionic tendencies, trying to cover my basis. I'm not even gonna this time. I'm not even gonna bother. I'm just gonna state it. You know my feelings towards all this, so I will state when I was leaving. I talked about this person as well in my Peterborough videos. When I was leaving Toronto, I don't know, about maybe 2 separate nights. Well, on some nights some days I went over to visit a friend of mine who is also polyamorous, or engages in platonic intimacy. And does some form of sex work. And I admitted to them that I had a crush on them for time that I was in high school with them. And we were maybe gonna hook up for just one day before Okay, that was apparently, I don't know if the video picked up that shouting in the background from behind the wall. That is the neighbors having an argument. I hope it's not domestic abuse or verbal abuse. I couldn't exactly hear through the walls, at least where I am right now. Anyway. This person, we were maybe going to hook up for a day. That didn't end up happening because of reasons, just reasons that they were dealing with something at their household, and it didn't end up happening. And no problem with that. But I was just well, it really just and not even it doesn't. Well, obviously, again, like I said in those videos in Peterborough, it would have been nice to engage in sexual intimacy or some sort of just platonic intimacy. But more so, I wanted to just... I wish I had just stopped by one more time to say goodbye in person. I said goodbye over the phone, and I've kept in contact with this person, but... What I really regret is, I've apologized to them for this before, but they're always like, oh, it's fine. It's not like I, even told me once, it's not like I really tried to engage in a further relationship myself, anyway. I wish that I had... I wish that I had bothered to just take the chance to ask them out on a date. I wish I had bothered to just ask about a relationship, a romantic relationship. Still being polyamorous and all that, and engaging in platonic intimacy, as we both knew. But still, for a romantic relationship, I wish I had courage to just... Well, actually, no, it's not even that. It's because I didn't, for a while, think that maybe we weren't very compatible. I thought for a bit, in terms of romance. But I completely misjudged that. Completely. It's not saying anything like as if they're, as if I thought, oh well, as if they're not good enough for me or anything like that. No, I mean like, just romantically, I for a while didn't think it would work out. I just thought being friends was completely, even with just being friends is completely fine. It's fantastic. It's just, I wish I hadn't I wish I had thought twice. I wish I had looked at it much more deeply and not misjudged the potentiality of what could have been. I wish I had seen if they wanted to go on a date. And I've thought about actually asking over the phone this person this question, and I don't know how... Okay, first, what's my 7%? I know how this can... I have meddled with. I've been a toxic person in a relationship before. Friendship. As I've stated before. I have meddled with people's hearts and meddled with people's platonic connections in ways that I greatly wish I hadn't. And I don't know whether I should ask this person this or not, because I know how this can very much muddle how problematic this can. Well, if for people who maybe aren't as, what's the word? Well, look at maybe relationships in more of a, I guess, immature light, or more. Well, hell, I think a lot of how the world views romance and friendship, platonic connections, platonic intimacy, all that, romantic intimacy, I think it's very fucked up how a lot of the world views it. Even as varying as it can be across the board in different countries and different cultures, I still think a lot of it is screwy. Very much. But I've been contemplating calling this person and asking them, hey, I know I may never be coming back to Toronto. If there's a possibility that I did, or, well, no, what I would be more specific, if there was a possibility that I either came back to Toronto and we were both romantically still single, or if, well, I'm technically, I used to say in the past that I was like polyamorous, but I was more, in terms of romantic relation, more non-monogamous, where it would only be me and another person in a romantic relationship, but we'd still engage in platonic intimacy, say with people we knew, or just someone we got to know, or friends, or like individually. However, no, I'm fine with a like polygamous relationship. I'm completely fine with polygamous engagement of more people in a romantic relationship. If so, I don't know their stance on that, but if I was ever to come back to Toronto and I was, let's just say for the sake to simplify it, I guess to simplify it here, that I was single and they were single, or if we met at some point in another part of the world, another part of Canada, they've always wanted to go to Japan, so maybe if we were both to make it to Japan one day. If we were to meet and we were both single, or, okay, if we were in a polygamous relationship, or like I was in one, or if you were in one, and we were open to another person, whatever else. I've been thinking, asking them, would you like to go on that date? And just see how things went. So that's another regret I have. There's a few more that I have. Here's something I should say that I was wrong about. Actually, I'm running out of time right now. I was wrong about something relating to cultural language, actually, relating to AAVE, African American Vernacular English, and just not even that, Hispanic Vernacular English, mainly in North America and Oceania, Western Europe, and parts of Brazil. Certain cultures having come over in more of the largest cities like Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo, the largest city in Brazil, and how cultural slang and wording had formed. I was wrong about something of how it had formed, which I didn't know until I recently learned it. Which is really idiotic considering the fact that what I found out makes a lot more sense than what I had originally from the information I had thought. Well, from information I'd gathered, and also I acknowledge that I didn't know entirely how certain vernaculars had formed. But I thought, no, obviously I'm not entirely wrong with something I thought. It is an element of one other thing. It's just the other form. I don't know how I didn't think of this in terms, because it makes a lot more sense. A lot more sense. I'll do another video on my regrets, because I have more at some point. So, to end this video off, I guess, No, you know what? This is getting too long. I'll save it. I will save it. I was going to go over what have I learned so far from the 6 months after having left Toronto. Going up to Crow's Landing and then staying there for 3.5 to 4 months and coming up here to Ottawa. What have I learned so far? There's some things I still need to hash out in my mind with that. One thing in particular that I'm thinking about. I'll save that. But I'm going to try and export this video and actually I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about with the 2 YouTubers after this. Enjoy this for what it was. It's themes of remorse. So, yeah. Bye. Oh, damn. I don't know what the hell that was. Looked about as lengthy and about as, well, it had the body type of what looked to be a fox. But I have no clue because I couldn't see it very well. Interesting. I just now noticed that bright orange, very much a luminescent moon, or the light being cast from the moon. That is beautiful. I don't know if that's technically a harvest moon, considering the time of year. I don't know, it's just, that's pretty.